On the beaches of Negril, Jamaica, is a place called Rick's Cafe. And it's known for having this cliff that people can jump from into the beautiful blue water. I took this picture when I was there in 2010, and I remember my heart pounding just thinking about making that jump. It's a 35-foot cliff, and you're jumping into about 15 feet of water, so technically it's safe, but I bet they have a pretty extensive insurance policy just in case. So someone would jump and everyone would cheer, and then the person would emerge from the water with this huge smile on their face. And you can see there's a bunch of people at the top of the cliff, also in their bathing suits, getting ready to take that same plunge. But inevitably, a lot of them would get to the edge and change their mind. Even though there's plenty of evidence to suggest not only would they be fine if they jumped, but they'd actually probably even feel pretty incredible after doing it. And I know a lot of you are sitting out there thinking, there's no way I'm jumping. But you don't have to commit to that 35-foot leap, because Rick's Cafe has 3 heights you can jump from: the 35, a 10-foot, and a 25-foot. And if you're still thinking, there's no way I'm making that jump, would that change if you knew that as soon as you jumped, a big net would appear and catch you? I was 14 when I took that picture, and I did not jump. I did, however, make my parents buy me the Rick's Cafe t-shirt, so people would see me wearing it and think I was cool enough to jump. I was 22 when I took my first 35-foot leap, only it was not into the Jamaican waters. As a kid, I always knew I wanted to be a news anchor, or at least on TV in some capacity. Shocking, I know, coming from someone on this stage. I went to Indiana University, and I studied broadcast journalism. And that decision was about a 20-foot leap. Because if we're being realistic, it's incredibly competitive to get a news job out of school. You usually end up in a really small market at a small station, and you make barely any money. Now saying this out loud, I'm like, why was this my dream job? So come March 2017, I'm a senior in college, 2 months from graduating, and I don't have a job lined up yet. I'd probably applied to about 40 stations and heard nothing back. And they're being nice about it, but my parents are for sure starting to panic a little bit at this point. But I wasn't, because I knew this is what I'm meant to do. So there are 200 plus TV news markets out there. And we all know the glamorous ones, like number 1, New York, number 2, LA, and number 3, Chicago. Well, then you've got number 189, Twin Falls, Idaho, number 195, Eureka, California, and rounding out the list at number 210, Glendive, Montana. At this point, I was bracing myself for Glendive. No offense if you're from there. But all of a sudden, something amazing happened. I got a call from a Sarasota, Florida phone number. And on the other end was the news director from a TV station there. And he said, I was looking on YouTube for reporters, and I found your reel. Have you ever heard of Sarasota, Florida? And I said, not only have I heard of Sarasota, Florida, but I've been vacationing there since 2002, because that's where my grandparents, Gigi and Papa, lived half the year. I got the job offer on March 8th, my Papa's 75th birthday. So I took my 35-foot leap, and I moved to Florida, and it paid off. Not literally, of course, because I was making $24,000 a year. But I did become the midday anchor and then the evening anchor. And most importantly, I met my husband in Sarasota. And we get to talking, and long story short, he also studied broadcast journalism, was looking for a job in sports, and got his job at my station on my Gigi's birthday. So why do I share these things with you? The birthdays, the dates. I know there are a lot of cynics or realists out there who would say those are just coincidences. But I have a different theory. Meet Bob. Bob lives in comfortland. He knows everybody. He could do his commute to work with his eyes closed. And if we're being real, he could even do his job with his eyes closed. He doesn't like his job, but he loves that it's dependable and predictable. And Bob does not live in comfortland alone. According to Gallup's 2022 State of the Global Workplace report, of the 68,000 employees surveyed, 60% said they feel emotionally detached from work, and 19% are miserable. Miserable. Comedian George Carlin even once said, "Oh, you hate your job? Why didn't you say so? There's a support group for that. It's called Everybody, and they meet at the bar." It's kind of funny, but also kind of not, because the average person spends about 90,000 hours working over his or her lifetime. So why do people adopt this "it is what it is," my least favorite saying, mentality, and stay in comfortland? Because the alternative is Unknownville. Comfortland was warm and cozy and predictable, but Unknownville is riddled with fear, uncertainty, and risk. I should know. I bought a one-way ticket to Unknownville when I moved to Florida, and it was the best decision I ever made. I met a man named PJ Delaney, who has Parkinson's disease, and got to follow him into the operating room for a life-changing brain surgery in a 6-part series called Inside PJ's Brain. I sat with Holocaust survivors to listen to and then retell their stories of what hatred can do and why we need to love and respect each other. I was making a difference, and my purpose as a storyteller was being fulfilled. But then came March of 2020. We all know what happened then. I wasn't getting to sit across from these people anymore on the best and worst days of their lives and look into their eyes. I was interviewing them on Zoom. Day in and day out, I sat on the anchor desk like a broken record. COVID, COVID, COVID. Vaccine, vaccine, vaccine. Election, election, election. I was like, Bob, I could do this job with my eyes closed. I was on autopilot, just going through the motions. And just like that, I'm back in Comfortland. But like Bob and many others who want to leave Comfortland, I was listening to the mayor of Comfortland, the Fear Fairy. And the Fear Fairy is really just like the Tooth Fairy, except instead of money under your pillow, you get debilitating anxiety. And the Fear Fairy is the same one popping up at Rick's Cafe saying, "Are you sure you want to take that leap? Are you sure you want to leave that relationship? You might be lonely. Are you sure you want to have that tough conversation with a friend?" So I want you to think about where in your life that annoying little Fear Fairy keeps popping up, because let's be real, we all have something. And for some of us, it might be something small, like working up the courage to ask your passive-aggressive boss for a day off of work. And for others, it might be really big, like filing for divorce. And you might be wondering, okay, so how do I kick this annoying Fear Fairy to the curb so I can take the leap? And here's the answer. It's time to take the leap when your inner knowing is stronger than any fear. And when I say inner knowing, I'm also referring to your intuition. You know when you just know something to be true, but you can't really explain how? Like you get a gut feeling not to turn down a certain street, only to find out later there was a car crash there? Or maybe you know what I'm about to say and can finish my sandwich? Or when you meet the right partner, and to the outside world things look like they're moving really fast, but the two of you just say, "When you know, you know." And we hear that word intuition a lot, but what does it really mean? In Carl Jung's theory of the ego, described in 1916 in Psychological Types, intuition is an irrational function that we use to create new ideas, visualizations, possibilities, and ways out of a blocked situation. I define intuition as our inner compass, or I guess in 2024, our inner Google Maps, our North Star, that nudge guiding us toward what we know is really best for us and away from what isn't. That inner knowing that most of the time is beyond logic. Do we all have it? Yes. Do we always listen to it? I think you know that answer. So here I am in 2021, unhappy in news, and I thought of The Haven, a nonprofit that serves people with disabilities. And I had done a lot of stories there. And every time I would go do a story, I got this feeling of peace every time I would step onto their beautiful 32-acre campus, surrounded by individuals with disabilities who always knew me by name and would always greet me with a hug, a smile, and a high five. Before I could even apply, I found out they were about to start a search to fill a development role. And I had that inner knowing. This job is for me. Any guesses what day I had my interview? March 8th, my papa's birthday again, 4 years later. So now I'm back in Unknownville, but at least that stupid fear fairy's gone. I had never worked for a nonprofit. I had never raised money or connected with donors or planned events, but I just knew it would work out. I ended up working there for 2 years and absolutely loved it. I planned our first ever gala, which brought in over $200,000, and even took advantage of my news expertise to start an agency newscast called Haven Happenings, anchored by the clients with disabilities. So that's our weatherman, Jimmy. He's very good. And every time somebody would watch Haven Happenings, they would say the same thing. Gosh, this news is so happy. I wish all news was like this. And then my intuition spoke up again. And it said, you need to start a good news network. So I took another 35-foot leap and started my nonprofit, No Blues News. And these decisions I've made are not impulsive. I've thought all of them through. But the difference is when I was weighing on this one for a few months, I didn't spend any time up here. I focused on here and here. It's called a gut feeling for a reason. Because if the worst case scenario was that my nonprofit fell flat on its face and I went and got another great job at another great organization in town, is that really so scary? So I told them I was leaving, and that was pretty emotional for me. Plus, on my drive home, someone tried to weasel their way back into the picture. Again. But I pulled into my driveway, got out of my car, and this was on my front doorstep. And if you can't see, please don't look too closely at my old manicure. But that's a pamphlet that says Good News Pest Solutions. You just can't make this stuff up. I mean, technically you could, but I'm not. So remember my theory about those things we call coincidences, like the birthdays and the dates, or when the fact that I saw that this TEDx event was on March 28th, my husband's birthday, and the theme was chances. I knew I'd be standing here with you. And I know there are still some skeptics saying, all right, well, that's cool. I guess those coincidences are pretty remarkable, but things don't work like that in real life and blah, blah, blah. So we're going to get sciencey here for a second. Bet you didn't see that coming. Because this is physics. All atoms and molecules and matter vibrate at a certain frequency, right? And thanks to Albert Einstein and E=mc², we now know that energy and matter can't be separated. I feel so smart saying that. This is the vibrational scale of consciousness, otherwise known as the map of consciousness, founded by David R. Hawkins, MD, PhD. So you see how fear is in the orange there, pretty low on the energetic spectrum? Because fear comes out of a place of survival and just trying to get by. But then when you take the leap, whether it's a 5-foot leap or a 50-foot leap, you move up to courage. And then after you took the leap and you're doing the thing that you've always dreamt of doing, now you've moved up to joy. And these thoughts and feelings literally control the physical vibration of our bodies. So now you're vibrating at a much higher frequency. And the law of attraction says you will attract people, things, and experiences that match your vibration. So doesn't that mean, as long as you're operating from a place of courage and joy instead of fear, that you'll always be safe? Dare I say a net will even catch you after you leap? So instead of calling these things coincidences, let's call them signs or synchronicities, little rewards showing up to tell you that you're on the right path. And maybe they're not so little. Okay, they're not always literal signs, but you get the picture. And what if the only way to experience them is to be brave enough to live the life you actually want to live? Simple, but not easy. Because all I know is the more leaps that I take, the more I experience these amazing synchronicities, and the more doors open. So when you're telling yourself that the move you need to make is too scary, I want you to ask yourself this. Isn't it also scary to be somewhere every day that I don't like, doing something that brings me no joy? To me, that's much scarier. Is it possible we've had it backwards this whole time? What if this is really Comfortland, and this is Unknownville, just waiting for you on the other side of that fear? And I'm not telling you to quit your job tomorrow. Well, maybe I am. You know what you need to do. You've just been putting it off. And it may not be one huge leap. It may be baby steps. That's a different Bob. But don't take my word for it, because the only way to truly find out if the net will catch you is to leap.